I found this toy keyboard at the thrift store for $5 and it sounds just as bad as it looks. But I'm gonna rip off all the plastic and transform it into a walnut and steel work of art, complete with glowing analog tube preamps, built-in effects, and a design inspired by the Mini Moog. In the end, this $5 toy will become a playable showpiece, something you'll actually be able to see, hear, and play at my upcoming art show. And this video is brought to us by Squarespace. Not only is the look gonna change, but the sound is going to change too. So while I am taking this apart, I'm gonna play you a silly little song I wrote and recorded with the keyboard in its factory state. Now that we got this gutted to its core components, let's talk about the game plan. I want to warm up the digital sound of the keyboard by using this tube preamplifier right here. The cool thing about this is the vacuum tubes have a nice warm glow when powered on. So I think I'm gonna make them visible in the case that we're gonna make. Plus, if we overdrive the signal going to the tube preamplifier, we can get some pleasant distortion out of this. This is the key component of this build right here. The Casio has a bunch of sounds built into it, but you can't modify them in any way. So I picked up some of the cheapest guitar pedals I could find on Amazon, and we are going to gut them and then insert these into the case that we're going to build. This way, instead of a keyboard with a bunch of guitar pedals bolted on, it'll look like one cohesive instrument. I want the controls on the back to be upright like a Moog synthesizer. This is a newer one, but the classic Mini Moog style is what I'm actually going for. And this has kind of like a spaceship cockpit feel to it. And I can't go any further without giving a shout out to Love Holton, who is one of my favorite artists of all time. He is known for taking modern synthesizers and recasing them like this. His work is just absolutely phenomenal. Somebody worth checking out, especially his Instagram and his YouTube channel. He's seriously one of my favorite artists on this planet. With a lot of measuring and drawing, I recreated the front panel here in Illustrator. Some of the controls I don't want, so they're gonna be covered up, but the main ones here are redrawn. Even though I used calipers, this took so many iterations to get absolutely perfect. And I cut everything out on paper with the laser. Paper is cheap, so it's a great way to cut to fit. This will eventually be cut into steel, but just to be sure it was going to work, I cut one final piece out of 1/8 inch plywood using the new X-Tool P3. And then I went through the whole process again with the effects panel drawn up in Illustrator, which is on a completely different panel, and then all the iterations and cutouts on the laser. So I 3D printed some standoffs to keep the preamplifier from touching the wood. I have my effects breadboard set up here, and let me explain what's going on the back side. So we have our inputs coming out of the keyboard into this potentiometer, which is going to control how much signal goes into the preamplifier here. The stronger the signal, the more distortion that we can get. It then comes out of the preamp and into this EQ pedal here. And the EQ pedal also has a level. So we've got an input level and an output level, somewhat like a Fender guitar amp. It then comes out of the EQ section and into a delay pedal, out of the delay into a chorus, out of the chorus into a reverb, and then finally we have our audio out here. I don't want anything to run on batteries, and we have a lot of things to power up. We need power for the Casio keyboard, we need power for the EQ, chorus, delay, the reverb, as well as the preamplifier, and I don't want a whole bunch of wires coming out that has to plug into the wall. So I am using this power supply, and it's made by the same company that makes the pedals, that's going to power everything. And this is all going to be hidden inside the case. So hopefully our shapes are finalized with our wood prototypes. Now I'm going to cut it out on 18 gauge steel using the brand new X-Tool metal fab. This is a CNC cutter for metal, which works completely differently than a CNC cutter for wood. It uses a fiber laser, I believe. And so we went ahead and we cut down a big sheet to a manageable size that will fit into the machine using the handheld laser version of the metal fab. So now I'm going to throw this into the machine here. I got the X-Tool Studio open here, so I'm just going to import my Illustrator file and then bring that right where I want to cut it. This is pretty amazing. Move that up right there. We got 3/64 inch steel. We're just going to use the default settings and we just hit process. This is amazing. What I'm cutting here is pretty thin, but the metal fab can cut much thicker. I've got a dedicated video all about this machine and I absolutely love it. It blows my mind every single time I use it. If I needed something this customized in the past, I'd have to send it out and wait. Now I can cut right here in my shop the same day and keep moving forward. And honestly, we're not even scratching the surface. This thing can cut, weld, engrave, and even remove rust. Look at that. Not even hot. Holy cow.
That took about like 3 minutes.
Yeah, that was so fast. That is so freaking amazing. We cut the wood piece on the P3 and we cut the metal piece on the metal fab and they line up exactly. That is some crazy precision. The metal fab is just pure magic to me. Absolutely amazing. Blows my mind every time I use it. Oh, also, I didn't do any cleanup. There is no cleanup. There's no dross to clean up. That's just the default settings and it's so perfect. So now we're gonna build the two ends on both of the panels inward so we can mount this into the case that we're going to build next. So how that works is I stick it into my caca and just bend it into place. I'm using an angle gauge here, but it's completely overkill. It's not needed. But it does look cool on camera. Oh, that is perfect. The part of the chassis where the keys are connected to is quite complex, and I don't think there's any reason to reinvent the wheel here. So I'm gonna take this over to the bandsaw and chop off the plastic that we don't need. And then it's back over to the metal fab where I'm cutting out the piece that's going to surround the keyboard. So essentially, you're not gonna see any plastic except for the keys. Again, this is so incredibly fast. The finish is clean right off the machine. There's no sanding or extra steps. If I were to cut this with an angle grinder or a plasma cutter, there'd be a lot of work to do after the cut. Here, I can go straight back to working on the keyboard. There's some functionality on here that I don't want on the final design. It's got some pre-built-in patterns and songs on there, which means I can get rid of this. And then I don't need the start and stop and tempo buttons here, so I can get rid of that. So those are just hidden on the control panel here. I want to move the power switch from the front panel to the back, and that means I need to solder a little jumper here on the board so it's always in the on state. And the last thing I need to do is lock in the volume button at full volume because we're going to control that on the effects board. To attach the main board to the faceplate, I went back over to the X-Tool P3 and cut out some plywood spacers, and I have them just sitting on the main board for placement. I'm adding some CA glue on top, and I'm gonna set the faceplate on top here until that glue dries. And I pull it off, and everything is in its right place. So then when it comes time to assemble everything, I can screw the main board right into the faceplate. And then all of the metal faceplates get a few coats of primer and spray paint. For the labels, I drew this design up in Adobe Illustrator, and way back in the 90s, I went to school for graphic design. So this is tapping into my old skill sets from my college days. We learned about many different printing techniques, and one of them was screen printing. And this is how I'm going to label everything here. This is something that I used to do quite a bit in my younger days. So this involves coating a screen with a light sensitive emulsion. I'll take a film positive that I printed out and lay that on top of the screen and expose that to UV light. So whatever part of the emulsion that didn't see the light washes away and reveals our screen. Got our screens exposed, we got our metal panels all painted. And so I made this jig here where this will fit over top of this board. I can line this up with my screen. I ran into a lot of issues screen printing on metal. I've done plenty on fabric and posters, but it turns out metal is a completely different ballgame. Normally you would use an offset between the screen and the surface and flood the screen, but that wasn't working. So I placed the screen directly on the metal. You typically use a solvent-based ink on metal, but I wanted to stick with acrylic so I could clean up with water instead of harsh chemicals. The problem is acrylic is too thin. On fabric and posters, it soaks in and sets, but on metal, it spreads out. I thickened it with a gel medium, which helped, but it was too thick for my 230 mesh screen. I made it work this time, but next time I would use the thickened acrylic with a lower mesh screen. I think I could still keep the detail, but not have all the headings. In the meantime, we're gonna do some woodworking, and the side pieces are actually going to be made out of 3 pieces that are going to fit together, and it's gonna be similar to the Danish chair that we made in the previous video. That was the inspiration for the side panels. So what I'm going to do is spray adhesive these guys onto some plywood so we can make some router templates for repeated pieces. Normally, I would cut these templates out on the bandsaw, but since we have all kinds of straight edges, I thought the track saw would work much better. Now we can go to the disc sander and round over the corners. We got our 3 template pieces ready to go. The grain does matter because they're all going to work in a cool fashion, like me. So I'm just gonna lay this out, and it's 3 for each side. So I'm going to rough this out on the bandsaw before working with the devil tool, which is the router. We are going to use some double-sided tape, tape our templates to our rough cut pieces, and then route the final shape over on the router. There it goes. So now we're gonna start assembling everything. I don't have much of a game plan. I know how I'm gonna get started, but I'm not sure where this is going. So cross our fingers for good luck. But we have 3 front panel sections to get started with here. And this is the keyboard section. This is that piece that we cut out on the metal fab. It's been spray painted. This one did not get any kind of screen printing, but this is just going to get glued right onto the plastic frame here. I'm temporarily putting the speakers on now. There's going to be a whole grill section that we're going to get to when we get to the knobs. So look forward to the grill and knob section coming up. Right now, I just want to figure out how to get these panels attached to the case. This guy, and then this number pad. Oh my gosh, that is looking so freaking good. I just want this to be done so I can play it. Because we attach those little wood pieces to the back panel, we should be able to screw this right down. So I'm gonna pre-drill holes here. I don't wanna give this away just yet, but this is one of my favorite projects of all time. It looks so freaking cool. We're in my office, which is basically my recording studio, getting ready to use the converted Casio toy keyboard to make a song. This is usually where I record songs, where I've got all kinds of synths and drum machines and effects pedals and more synths and drum machines and analog tape machines and drums and guitars. We're gonna record that song here in a little bit, but we got a lot of details to finish up. And as you may know, it's the details that take the longest part. So while I'm working on these final details, I'd like to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for we're getting really close to 12 years. And it's never been easier, because when you go to set up a new website, Squarespace is gonna ask you a few questions. You're gonna answer those questions, and then while you're answering them, it's going to work on building your website in the background. So when you're ready to upload your own content, it's all there, ready to go. All the pages, it's all navigatable. All you gotta do is replace your images and replace the text with your images and text. Their templates are absolutely beautiful. I can go in and I can instantly change colors. When we rebranded like a year ago, it was no big deal. Swapped in a new logo, swapped out all the colors. It changed everything globally. It really is that easy. And I know a lot of you, you're a lot like me. A maker, a woodworker, a metal worker, a screen printer, an artist, a musician, doesn't matter. You need a website. You need a place to put all of your work. You need a place to contact your potential customers or clients, or you need a web presence is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, of course, you could have a web presence on social media, but you don't own that content. You don't own those sites. You want something that is yours, a place where you can send people to look at your portfolio and present yourself the way you want to be presented, not the way the social media platforms want to present you. There are so many options when using Squarespace. If you're like me, you're gonna wanna sell both physical and digital items, like the PDFs to some of the plans that I sell, and my merch. My merch is all print on demand using a company called Printful, which integrates seamlessly into my Squarespace site. So somebody places an order, that goes directly to Printful. They fulfill the order and ship it for me. I can focus on what matters to me, and that is being creative and making stuff with my hands. Oh yeah, and we didn't even dive into all the other crazy features Squarespace has. You can have a calendar so people can book time with you, which I will be doing in the near distant future, when you can book shop time with me and we can build a project together. More info on that in a few weeks. So visit squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, visit squarespace.com/makesomething for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you, Squarespace. Let's finish up this Casio Kids toy keyboard and make a song with it. This is one of my favorite projects of all time. I am so excited to show this off to you. So I took everything apart for one final time so I could add finish to the side pieces. The next step on the list was making the speaker covers and the knobs. So for the speakers, I went back to the metal fab and cut out these discs out of some perforated metal, which were held in place with these 3D printed covers. I even 3D printed all the knobs using black and white PLA and painted the top of them to match the keyboard. The star of the show was the X-Tool metal fab, which is made for cutting and welding steel, aluminum, and brass. I've got an entire video on this machine, and the things that it can do blow my mind. This kind of precision feels like what you'd get from a professional shop, but it's all happening right here in my garage. I'm taking raw material and ending up with something that looks and feels like a real product, something people would actually pay for, all done on this one machine. I'm able to prototype, iterate, and fabricate things right here instantly. And the feature they just added via a software update is engraving into metal, which you can't do on a CO2 laser. So I cut one last piece on the metal fab for the back plate and engraved the Casio logo. I will have an affiliate link to the metal fab for cutting metal, as well as the brand new X-Tool P3 CO2 laser that I use to cut all the wood and paper pieces. Also, in the previous video, I made this Danish chair using only a laser cutter. It is crazy what you can do with a laser these days. I'm calling this the Lynchian keyboard, which is dedicated to one of my favorite human beings of all time, David Lynch. I drew this image up in Adobe Illustrator, and you may recognize it from a previous art project that we did. I am sorry for being a tease, but I don't want to show this off yet until you get to hear the song that I made with it coming up in just a few seconds. But right now, I just want to give you some basic ideas of the functionality of this, whatever this is. So here's the thing about toy keyboards. When you add a bunch of effects to them, they still sound like toy keyboards with a bunch of effects to them. And I'm gonna be running everything through this tiny, crappy little amp. So we got crap running through effects, going through crap. So I love lo-fi. I love crappy guitars. I love crappy amps. I've always collected just crappy instruments because I love that lo-fi aesthetic. You're not gonna get a good representation of how it sounds through the mic on my chest coming out of this amp right here. So just hold on for 30 seconds and I will record this direct into my computer. You'll get a better understanding of the tone. But right now, that's the normal sound. And if I turn the gain up, it gets a little distorted. If I switch to an organ sound, it sounds like a kid toy organ. But if I turn the gain up, we get that nice, warm, distorted sound. And I can add a little bit of reverb, add a little bit of chorus, a little bit of delay, play with the EQ a little bit. Gritty, real gritty. And then we got the drum sounds. I'm gonna take this inside. We're gonna record a little song, and this is it. This is the end of the video right here. Thank you for watching. As always, be safe, have fun, stay passionate, and make something.